This episode of Behind the Video is brought to you by the Independent Media Network. The Independent Media Network helps journalists and content creators create their own jobs by building sustainable online businesses. If you're an unemployed or underemployed journalist or content creator, visit imnct.com for more information. Hey everybody, it is Lon Seidman. We are back again for number 64, episode 64 of Behind the Video, and joining me as always is my lovely and talented co-host Tim Street. Tim, how are you out in LA today?
Yeah. It was a late night last night, but I'm here.
And what was the late night for?
Can't talk about it, sorry.
He's under NDA for his late night party. Got it. Well, I'm sure we will find out later on. And we have a guest today, Tim. Who's that?
Jay Bushman, Jedi Warrior, Transmedia Guru. Jay, thanks for joining us, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into web video, and what are some of the things that you've been working on?
Well, let's see. How did I get into web video? And you know, I'll use the T word. It's not a word that everyone loves. It's not a word that everybody understands. But transmedia, it's a term that nobody understands because
Google it. Don't explain it now. Just Google it if you don't know.
There are competing definitions for it.
Let them figure out their own. Just tell us what you're doing, man.
So I worked on a project last year called the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which was a multi-platform modern adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. That it lasted for an entire year, and we had new content pretty much every single day over the span of a year. When we started,
when you say new content, can you explain that?
Sure. We had the spine of the story was video. And we had two YouTube videos a week at the bare minimum. But all of our characters had social network presences on Twitter and Tumblr and Facebook and a bunch of other platforms like LinkedIn and GetGlue and This Is My Jam. And these characters would talk to each other in between the videos. And you know, that's not something that is unheard of. A lot of shows will do stuff like that. But the difference with Lizzie Bennet Diaries is we put plot points and major plot elements and major story beats in the social media and on the web and in other platforms and have them play out in places other than the main video counts. We also ended up spinning off some of our characters into their own series of videos. So by the end, I think we had 5 separate YouTube channels and about 35 different social network presences for all the characters in the story. And so on any given day, there was a video from one character or a video from another character or a Twitter conversation between a bunch of different characters, or one of the characters would post what song they were listening to that day. And over the span of the year, there was pretty much every day there was some new content.
That sounds like a lot of work. You get extra money for that, or do you win any awards?
Extra money, not yet. Where you can hope. But we've done pretty well on the hardware side. And the big exciting one is that next week we'll be receiving an Emmy for outstanding interactive content in the original category, which is really cool because for so long this kind of stuff has been done as an adjunct to something else. It's been a marketing campaign to sell some other thing, and to be able to tell stories like this where the story itself is the point, it's not there to further some other agenda, is really wonderful.
That's very exciting. Congratulations. So keep going on how you got into doing this kind of stuff.
So
and other stuff you're working on.
It was 2006, I think, 2006, 2007, and I'd spent several years here in LA sort of doing the traditional route of writing screenplays and then going out and trying to pitch them. And I'd been working. I enjoy personally. I'm into adaptations, and so I'd been working on like a Pride and Prejudice idea, and some other modern classics like modernizing Shakespeare plays. And I would write screenplays, and then I'd go and I'd pitch meetings about it, and nobody would take me seriously. Like you'd be like, you want to do what? Why would you do that? There's no audience for this. And it got really frustrating. But this was about 2006 and 2007. Around the time when Jonathan Colton was becoming really big for putting his music directly online to the audience. And writers like Cory Doctorow were putting their short stories online. And I looked at that and I was like, well, this is really great, but how do you take a script, or how do you take a dramatic experience and go directly to an audience, especially if you don't have a budget to produce video at a high quality level? And so then I started looking at ways that you could use different platforms at different sites on the internet as the conduit to tell stories. So I started, just basically making some small projects of my own back then, and each one got a little bigger and got a little bigger until we got to Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which was sort of like the payoff for 5 or 6 years of experimenting with different ways of using Twitter and YouTube and websites as storytelling engines.
And Lizzie Bennet Diaries has been really fascinating to us here because the budget really wasn't all that expensive, right? I mean, it was
No.
mostly it was shot in the way a lot of YouTubers shoot videos. It was a lot of dialogue, which I think for what you do must have been liberating, right? To be able to just just to be focused strictly on dialogue, almost, right?
It was an interesting way to shoot, and there's no way that I think we could have done this show, especially at this budgetary level, without shooting that way. Because we would shoot a single day, we would shoot a month's worth of videos. So that's like 55 to 60 pages of script content. So in order to pull that off, to have a single set, a single camera, you don't move the lights, you just have people looking at the camera and talking, is a way to be able to get an enormous amount of content in a short shooting day. But at the same time, we ran this production, at least behind the scenes, very much like a television series. So there was a writer's room of 6 writers that would work on all of these scripts, and we would meet pretty often, and so the scripting process was very intensive. And we were extremely fortunate, and I always would like to make this point that we could have done all of this, and if we did not have an actress like Ashley Clemens to play the character of Lizzie Bennet, it would not have worked, because an enormous amount of the show rested on her shoulders, and just the ability to be on camera and be the focus of attention day in, day out, week in, week out for a year. The amount of work she had to do is immense. And you need a specific and a special kind of performer to be able to be the focal point of a show. So, this was an incredible team effort from everyone involved. And it was one of those things where you start it and you think, oh, well, we'll see what happens. And it just turned into this magical experience.
How does it feel too that you've built such an amazing fan base, and like I said, we've talked about Lizzie Bennet quite a bit on the show before. We've had Bernie Sue on a number of times as well. Mm-hmm. Did you expect it to take off the way it did, especially getting so much interest from young women, which is really the main audience for this? I mean, this is classic literature that you've made interesting to young people. That must feel pretty good, right?
Well, like I said before, this is what I've been working on, these kinds of things for a while, and I spent a long time, many years, going into meetings and talking about this, this kind of stuff, to be told there's no audience for this, nobody wants to see this, and so to be able to point to this and say you're wrong, there's an enormous audience. Right. For this, and you see a moldy classic that you were forced to read in school, so you have a bad sort of reaction to. I see a blockbuster with centuries worth of a track record, and so this has been a nice sort of way to reset that conversation, and I've certainly found that since Lizzie, those conversations have gone a little differently.
It sounds like it must be. And, it's funny, too, is the audience sizes, are different online than they are elsewhere. And you can be profitable with smaller but more engaged audiences than you would trying to get kind of a shotgun blast that you get out of a cable buy or something like that. So is that, I mean, how has that been for you? I mean,
I think we would have been satisfied with that. I think we would have been thrilled with that. We actually would sit there and watch the view counts go up for the go up for each of the videos and go, right. Wow, we're like, these are more viewers than like an episode of television on the CW.
Right.
And like, just to sit back and think about that is really kind of humbling. And the other really neat thing is, we had 100 episodes in the main channel, and by episode 98, 99, we were getting about 300,000 views in the first week or so. And to think that these 300,000 views, like, you had to watch every single episode that came before in order for that to make sense. So that,
Right.
we didn't just have the audience, we kept them, and we kept them engaged. And that was, it was humbling. I keep going back to the word humbling, that, we made this thing and it just sort of took off.
What are some of the tools that you're using to help things take off? Obviously, you've got a great story and a fan base, but what are some of your favorite tools that you play with to get the story out there?
It's a challenge. There are a lot of tools that do like 75% of what you need, but then don't have the rest of it. We used a platform on Lizzie Bennet called Sprout Social to manage all of our different social accounts. And it was really helpful most of the time, but it did have some limitations that made it a little difficult. And like you can tell, there were a couple of moments where there were Twitter conversations between two characters that left off the @ signs. So they just sort of looked like they were talking to nobody, and that was like, those were screw ups that I'd made because I had to write the dialogue in another venue and then paste them into Sprout Social. And since Sprout Social, and I don't know, and it's not just Sprout Social, none of the aggregation, the social aggregation engines, at least that we've found so far, will allow you to post conversations that thread. So they just kind of come out on Twitter as one-offs, and they don't take advantage of Twitter's conversation setup. So sometimes we would post directly to Twitter just if it was really important to have a full conversation. But yeah, so there were times where transferring from, say, just a text editor into Sprout Social, I would forget, oh no, wait, I have to put the @ signs on there too, and it would go out and people would be like, wait, are they just talking? Who are they talking to? And it's like, oh, damn it. And because you can't like go back and edit a tweet, it's like, oh, there's nothing.
Right.
Just
got to delete it or start over again. And,
Yeah.
and now, did you ever sleep? I mean, because your fans don't sleep, right? I mean, and you got them all over the world, and you've got this pressure now to interact. I mean, do you feel like you spent more time on this project than you would if you had written for television, where you write it, you send it off, and
Absolutely.
You're good until the DVD extras come out?
Absolutely. And we get asked this a lot. I get asked, how many hours a day do you spend on this show? And I would jokingly reply, all of them. Because
right.
You always have to kind of keep an eye on what's happening, and that's actually a difficult thing to figure out for the business model, because you need a team, or at least one person. I was very fortunate on Lizzie to have someone helping me, a wonderful writer and social media expert and fan expert, a woman named Alexandra Edwards, who was my transmedia editor on Lizzie. And between the two of us, we would just keep an eye on everything and try and post stuff when it seemed warranted. But then there were also the pre-planned things. So it's a mix of figuring out when you want your planned stuff to go out and being able to react in the moment, and being able to reach out to the rest of the team and get them involved when we need it.
Now, she was in a different time zone, right?
She is in Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's helpful in transmedia, I haven't
Right.
but
it helped in some
time
ways. Yeah, as much as it would have been nice to have everyone here, and in some ways you lose by not having the face-to-face. In other ways, it's nice to have people spread across different time zones.
Sure. So you got that time thing that can go.
Yeah.
Now, what did you learn that so you went in with some assumptions, obviously, that okay, we're going to try this thing out, we're going to see how things develop. What did you learn along the way that changed your way of thinking when it comes to transmedia? And I think,
wow.
Was there any aha moments, or is it a constant evolution?
There were so many aha moments that like every moment seemed like an aha moment. It was really interesting to see how smart the audience was, and we started to learn pretty quickly that we could do less and they would pick up on it faster. And so as we went along, I think you started to see all of the show kind of be able to go a little deeper and to get a little more complex, because we didn't have to explain as much. People really went along for the ride. At the same time, I think we learned, one of the things I learned that's kind of been a big thing for me, and this is, I think, a really huge challenge in multi-platform and transmedia stories that are built like this, is everything is so built towards real-time engagement and what's now, what's happening now, what's the latest thing, that if you come to something late, it can be difficult to catch up. Now, so in fact, you've got the story page up right there, and this is our big sort of tool to try and solve this. Is it's just a page with a list of links, and each link is to the next major story beat on whatever platform it is. It's easy to go to YouTube and just pull up the playlist and watch all of the 100 episodes in order, but it's not so easy to find the master guide to when did this Twitter conversation happen, when did this thing happen on Tumblr, where does it go in the story, and how, if you have not watched it from the beginning, how do you get to re-experience the full transmedia multi-platform version of the story in something akin to what it was like the first time through. There are no tools to do that. Because, and that's a platform bias. That's because all of these platforms are biased towards real time, and Twitter makes it incredibly difficult to find stuff that was posted in the past. They're just not built to do it. That's not what their tool does. And
so you have to manually curate that, really, right? I mean,
we have to do a lot of manual curation, and so trying to come up with ways that you can make an archived version of this experience that still also feels enjoyable has been a challenge. We did on the follow-up show. We did a follow-up show after Lizzie Bennet ended, called "Welcome to Sanditon," which was based on an unfinished Jane Austen novel. And for that show, we've made that story page the front page. So instead of having to find, and there's that big button that says "Follow the story from the beginning," and we tried a couple of things to make that part of the experience a little more accessible. So this one, we actually had an RSS feed on the page, so that if you could just follow it that way, and then your feed would update with whatever the latest pieces were. So if you didn't want to follow the characters on Twitter, you could still get that content somehow. So it's not as I don't want to say pure is not the right word, but it's not as in the moment as if you were following all the characters themselves on Twitter, but it's still at least a version of the story.
And it does take time to really get these things curated. I mean, you're using Storify. I mean, it's not an automatic thing where you can just embed this conversation and kind of take it from there.
No.
So.
I mean, without Storify, I don't know what we would have done. Storify we actually started joking in during the process of Welcome to Sanditon. Welcome to Sanditon had a large interactive component where we asked the fans to play the rest of the town. So we encouraged them to create their own characters, their own businesses, and their own stories in the town and share them with each other. And
that's really cool.
We had about 500 Twitter accounts in the universe created in the first weekend. Wow. And it got so big that nobody could follow everything that was happening. And so we started using this line, "Storify or it didn't happen." Because you couldn't keep up with what was going on, so you had to create some kind of archive so people who missed it live could see some part of it.
So you have people interacting with each other playing characters in this town, I guess, right? Right.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
You almost need to build your own software platform next to really.
We actually partnered with a company called Theatrics that has a platform that's built for allowing fans to create their own videos and upload them into a central repository. So it's sort of like fictional, like a WordPress for a fictional universe. And so we partnered with Theatrics to build a version of their platform that was skinned for our story. And in the story of Sanditon, there's this piece of software, and that allows people to record their own vlogs and post their own content. And so we used Theatrics as the hub site and asked people to record their own videos and upload them and tell us about their version of life in this town. And then every other week or so, we would compile sort of a compilation reel of stuff that had been posted over the past 2 weeks. and there would be an episode every other week that was like, here's what's going on around the rest of the town. And we made that off of what the fan submissions were.
Wow. This makes me tired just thinking about it.
Yeah. So Jay, were there any?
Sorry, go ahead.
Were there any particular places that you found your fans hanging out more than others? I mean, I would assume that the majority of your fans are young, smart women who like to read. So what places were they hanging out online that you would discover them?
Tumblr. I think, and if going back to the other question about things that we learned or things that I learned specifically, I had been using Tumblr, but I don't think I quite ever understood the power of Tumblr and the power of Tumblr communities until this experience.
Tell us about that. I mean, like, I get Twitter. It's great for sharing, a few pictures or videos and talking about what you're doing and commenting on somebody else's stuff or retweeting. How's Tumblr different?
Tumblr is different because it does a really great job of highlighting creative work. So especially like fan art and the language of animated GIFs. And we would see all of this stuff that the fans would create inspired by the show. And because there's a unique thing in the architecture of Tumblr which has its upsides and its downsides, and it's really fascinating. I never really thought about it this way until somebody pointed it out to me a few months ago, that on most other sites on the internet, comments are anonymous, and that's where you get trolls, and that's where you get don't read the comments, and the whole culture of internet comments are awful. But on Tumblr, if you want to comment on something, you have to repost it on your own site. So you have to take ownership of it. Right. And so there's something about that changes the tenor of the conversation. And it also does this thing where, and this has its positive and its negative sides, that you get a conversation started, and if it reaches a certain velocity, it just keeps pinging between the same and then sometimes smaller group of people, which means the conversation can get insular, but it can also get really, really fast. And so it gains, you'll find things gain momentum on Tumblr really, really fast. And it's like, wait, where did this come from? And it goes from nothing to huge really, really, really quickly. I think there's a great example of that. This is one of my favorite things it's been around for a little more than a year, but about 2 months ago, Tumblr found it, and then it just exploded. It's this podcast called Welcome to Night Vale. I don't know if you guys have heard of the Welcome to Night Vale. I'm drinking out of my Welcome to Night Vale, my Night Vale community radio mug right now.
Awesome.
But Welcome to Night Vale is this fictional podcast set in a southwestern desert town where all the conspiracies are true, and it's hysterical. And it was like out of nowhere, my entire Tumblr feed was talking about Welcome to Night Vale. Like, it wasn't there one day, and then the next day my whole Tumblr dashboard was talking about it. And I was like, well, what's this? And I've talked to so many people that had this same experience. Where did you hear about this? Oh, on Tumblr. And it went from, what is this thing, to the #1 podcast in the U.S., like in the span of a week.
Wow.
And it's really, I think, from what I've seen anyway, it's Tumblr that drove that.
I think Tumblr was probably one of the smartest moves Yahoo made, and apparently it worked out great for everybody because Tumblr was just about out of money when they were bought.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to me. It's just if you think about where kids are, Facebook has now existed beyond the generation, so to speak, of high schoolers, right? Who've gone off to college, who stuck with the platform. Tumblr is kind of the new Facebook in a lot of ways, and it allows for a lot more creativity and you can actually make some money on it because you can embed your ads on there, which you can't do in other places. So
I'm also really excited for the future of Google+. And we started finding that Hangouts like this became a big way that the fan community stayed in touch with each other. That they would use Hangouts quite a bit. Part of it is also, I think, Google+ has nowhere to go but up, where Facebook has kind of hit a ceiling. Right. And we found that, we started with our characters on Facebook, and then we discovered that we weren't really using that all that much, that there wasn't much unique that we could get out of it. I'm sure that's probably just a failure of our imagination. We could probably find some other way to use it. But I'm more interested in how Google Plus can fill some of those roles in the future. But it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, no, I think it's you're right. It only has the only way it has to go is up, and I think as YouTube is, and I think really for what you're doing especially, is that there is this grand merger slowly happening of YouTube and Google Plus, because really YouTube is probably the most successful social media platform, even beyond Facebook at this point. And as those two orbits kind of merge, we're going to see, I think, a real good synergy there. And we do this show on there. We took a little hiatus and went to YouTube Live for a little bit. And Tim, I'll show you when we get into the show what we're doing differently this week. But it's pretty cool. So what's next? What do you got in the cooker?
A couple of big things. One is, we did Lizzie was a year long, and then it ended, and we always had in the plans to do a second year-long series. But we knew it would take a little while to kind of put that together, especially since we were all sort of exhausted after the end of Lizzie Bennet Diaries. So Welcome to Sanditon became what we've been calling a bridge series, just something to bridge the gap between the end of Lizzie Bennet Diaries and the beginning of the next series. And we were finally able to announce last month at VidCon that the next series is Emma approved. It's a modernization of Jane Austen's Emma, and it's set in the same universe as Lizzie Bennet Diaries and Welcome to Sanditon. I don't think we have a premiere date set yet, but a lot of work is happening behind the scenes on that. And that is a production of, this is one of the best things, I think, too, of the most crazy things that come out of Lizzie Bennet Diaries is, in the world of the story, Mr. Darcy's company is called Pemberley Digital. So Pemberley Digital started as a fictional entity and then became a real company that Bernie and Hank Green put together to oversee the production of the rest of that show in Sanditon, and now Emma approved. So Pemberley Digital has, we get, I'll go to the office and we'll have like people answering the phone saying, "Hello, Pemberley Digital," and
it's
it's
gotta be so weird, right?
Bizarre.
Yeah.
So Pemberley Digital is overseeing the production of Emma approved. That's one thing. But the other thing, and I'm really excited, this is actually the first time that I'm going to be talking about this project publicly. Like I mentioned before, I've spent a long time working on adaptations and not getting a lot of traction with them because people thought that nobody wanted to see this. And Lizzie seems to have changed the tenor a little bit. So I am at the very, very beginning stages of putting together a new project of my own. It's not under the Pemberley Digital umbrella, which is a modern multi-platform adaptation of Hamlet. It's geared towards a slightly older audience and a more balanced gender split between the audiences, and it's a little more political in nature, and it's going to be set in a version of Denmark that is undergoing a kind of a economic crisis and a political crisis, with a lot of demonstrations in the streets and sort of an Arab Spring feel to it.
Nobody will ever believe that would happen in real life, man.
Never.
No way.
Yeah, never.
And this sounds like a much bigger production than just having people in front of a little webcam or something like that.
It is,
right?
and it's one of the intentions here is to try and see if we can break some of the conventions that we've developed in Lizzie Bennet, and can we get past talking to the camera? Can we get past needing the camera to be in the scene at all times? Awesome. Which can be interesting, but can also be limiting.
Right.
And so I've set this project up to try and sort of see if we can explore some different directions. And yeah, so it's going to be on hopefully a little bit of a larger scale.
What's it called?
It's called #Hamlet.
Nice.
Awesome.
And it's still very, very, very early in the development cycle of this. But I do hope to have some more news about it in the next couple of weeks.
Great. We look forward to seeing more of that. This sounds awesome. I think it's gonna be really exciting to see how that develops.
Thank you.
And I'm sure you're not going to be sleeping much after that. So that coffee you've got, you may have to refill it.
Yeah, just get an IV bag.
Yeah, pretty much.
Do a direct injection. Well, JJ, thanks for joining us, and I hope you can stick around.
Thanks
We're going to talk about the news here. So if you don't mind, you can stick
Absolutely.
around. Now, so Tim, we're doing this differently again this week because YouTube or Google Hangouts, whatever, changed once again. So when we all logged in this morning, we had HD access now. So I guess the HD is like 720p on Google Hangouts now. They've switched their codecs and whatnot. So what we're doing now, because what I noticed last week, we had that, we both were short on time, so we just did a Hangout show versus the whole YouTube Live thing. We got more viewership from the show on Hangouts than we did on YouTube Live viewership. So I figured, you know what, let's go back to this. And this is actually now a simpler process. I'm going to pull up my third camera here, and you can get a sense as to what we got. So we got the laptop coming in here. We got our little Intensity Extreme. And what it's doing now is I'm using Wirecast for YouTube, which is the free software that you get for doing YouTube Live. It also shoots video as a virtual camera to Hangouts. So it kind of solves two problems. And it's a lot simpler to get this thing up and running because we're using the Hangout thing for the conversation now versus a whole separate deal. So it's working much better. So excited about that. And it was getting to be a little bit crazy down here on Sunday mornings trying to get everything going. So one other thing, Tim, this weekend I did a little experiment because we had this NASA shot this rocket off at the moon, and here in Connecticut we could actually see the rocket take off. And I said, oh, this is a good YouTube Live opportunity. So I grabbed my laptop and my Canon SLR, and I went down to the beach. We have we're here on the Connecticut shoreline. And actually shot this thing live taking off, and it was pretty cool. We got like the flame coming out the side of it. I'll pop up the video here so you can get a little bit of an idea of what we saw.
Why did they shoot this rocket off out of Virginia and not Florida?
I guess they're trying to expand their horizons a little bit, so to speak. There's a lot. They're trying to find cheaper ways to send things into space. And apparently, this thing is going. Here's the video here. This thing is going on a polar orbit. Not to get all scientific here, but it's going on a polar orbit. So it makes sense to launch it from Virginia versus further south. And what's
well, you save a little gas, huh?
You save exactly, and gas apparently when going to orbit is pretty critical. And but what was neat was that I went out and shot this thing and didn't think much of it. I was just going to go and do it anyhow for the local site that I write for. And right off the bat, because we were up first with a live event, we showed up in the search right away. So as people were looking to see when this launch was going, we ended up getting like 80 or 90 people watching it live. And then immediately after, because I had it record the thing, we were racking up probably almost 1,000 views like within the first hour, which isn't a lot, for people doing this stuff. But I was really kind of surprised that it did as well as it did. So I think that's an area where YouTube Live will best to hang out, in that if people are out searching for something, having that YouTube video there is really critical. And
yeah, if you would have titled it "What Does the Rocket Say?" maybe you would have got.
Yeah, what is this? What does the whatever say? You and Dave.
What
I
does
missed
the
something
Fox
here.
say? It's a Norwegian group. And they put together a music video that kind of makes fun of pop songs. And it's just hilarious. There's a cosplay element to it, so our friend Goldie Chan will, I'm sure she loves this video. And it's just stupid, goofy fun, and everybody loves it, and it's on fire.
It's on fire. Well, I'm going to pull that up here and just show that as we get on to our next story. But that's pretty wild. So what does? Oh,
it's kind of unreal. It's kind of unreal. And I saw it when I first saw it a couple days ago. I thought, wow, somebody stayed up all night drinking way too much coffee and watching. I don't know if you guys have seen the British sketch comedy, The Mighty Boosh. But this is a very, very Mighty Boosh flavor to it, and it was like, wow, they have spent way too much time like being awake watching that show in order to come up with something like this.
This is the video here?
Yeah. It's basically like children's lyrics applied to a pop song.
Got it. Oh, that's cool. Well, I'm gonna have to check this out after the show is over. See, I sometimes I feel like I'm living under a rock because I've got this newborn and I'm listening to like
this one like blew up overnight. So
did it? Okay, so I shouldn't feel
next
so bad.
week everybody will be talking about it.
Got it. Well, I will check it out. It's up to 8.7 million views already, so that's
Yeah, it could go after Gangnam Style.
wow. All right. Well, we're going to keep an eye on that one as it moves ahead. And Tim, we're going to have this little teaser. I have a Chromecast here, so we're going to talk about that at the end of the show. So stick around for that. But first, we're going to move on to our YouTube tops of the week. And YouTube didn't update its weekly thing, so we're going to look at the tube filter numbers. And the top 5 this week, believe it or not, Miley Cyrus is dominating a lot of it in a couple of ways. That Disney collector we talked about, she's still on top. I mean, she's racking up like 20 million views a week with Disney toys. It's unbelievable. She's not working for any independent or any channel people, so she's completely on her own. And I think she's got enough money now coming in to buy a lot more Disney toys. And I suspect that Disney's just sending them to her now for free, I would imagine. But Eminem came in at number 4 on his Vivo channel. Number 3, and this is how, if you're in the right place at the right time, things can really work in your favor. So some dude is out. He has like this channel. It's called Shockwave, but the S is a 5. And this dude is out at a just like somewhere where Miley Cyrus and a whole boatload of paparazzi happened to be in the same place at the same time, and he managed to be there and got her telling them to go F themselves or something. So that got 11 million views, and he's now number 3 on the list. Number 2 is Sky Does Minecraft Once More. And Jay, that's where you need to go next. You need to make a transmedia a story set in Minecraft. Can you do that?
I've actually had some concepts, some Minecraft concepts that have been floating around. So we'll see what we can do.
I'm waiting for Frogger to make a resurgence.
Yeah, the world of Frogger, right? You can build ways to kill your frog
Well,
squished.
we got to get back into the backstory of like, why does the frog need to cross the road?
Exactly.
Yeah,
There's a whole story there.
No one's ever answered that question, and actually, it's a great adaptation of it. So that's really cool.
I'd rather see that than another Transformers movie.
Yeah, you and me both. For some reason, it showed up on Netflix, and I was not. It was like one of these days where you're sick and you don't feel like doing anything, and I was like, oh god, and you can't. It's like you can't stop watching it for whatever reason. So, so maybe in 50 years you can do the modern adaptation of it of that.
Yeah.
And it's funny, not to go in too far off the weeds of this thing, but when the Transformers movie came out in like 1986, I was in like 3rd or 4th grade. And this to us was like high drama storytelling, like Optimus Prime dying. I mean, we were talking about this movie for months, and I finally watched it on Netflix like when the first one came out, and I said, "Oh my God, I can't believe like this is what passed for entertainment." No wonder why we hated to read. It was horrible. So Tim, you found this story on Vimeo interesting. I guess there's an indie film venture that they're backing. What's this about?
Yeah, so right now they're going to be funding some indie films, and it's only a select few people, but I think if it works out, it's going to expand more. I'm excited to see how it plays out, to see if any of the films are successful, and to see if we end up knowing anybody getting the money.
So I guess they're going to give what $10,000 to people to do this.
Yeah, 10 grand. I mean, with today's digital cameras and editing software, 10 grand goes a long ways. So I think there are some pretty smart filmmakers out there that can really pull together something. I mean, will they be able to make money at it, or will it be another voluntary slave operation?
Right.
Is a whole nother thing. I mean, I always look at contests as that kind of thing where, oh yeah, win this money and you get to make a film with the money you win. What?
Right.
What?
So
I didn't win anything.
Right.
And then the company that's putting on the contest owns the film, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So, wow. Well, that's intriguing. We'll see where that goes. The next thing is we've been following this the story out of New York with CBS and Time Warner have been kind of at war with each other. And did they ever resolve this? I think it's still off.
They done a deal.
Okay, so I guess Les Moonves
for the NFL. Yeah, the NFL was the bargaining chip. So it feels like CBS is the real winner of this deal. And you know what? Maybe like DirecTV and Dish as well, because I'm sure they picked up a lot of subscribers that were sick of dealing with this, especially in the LA area, because your options here are kind of limited as to what you can get. I mean, maybe AT&T Uverse in some parts of town. Or Verizon in others, but Time Warner dominates most of LA. There's also Charter here as well. So it didn't affect me because in my neighborhood it's Charter, Dish, or Direct. But the NFL was the deal.
I have Time Warner, and that makes it hard for me to support Time Warner in any kind of their disputes because I am the recipient of their quote-unquote service.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. And you guys are way oversaturated out there. And see,
at least it wasn't a prank.
That's right, and LG. This was amazing. So I'd love to, this 4K thing is happening, right? I mean, we're starting to see the TVs come down in price, and so I guess they you can't do this in the United States because there's all these labor laws about this kind of stuff. But I guess they had these people come in for a job interview, and then they had this 4K display that looked like a window, and these displays. Have you seen one of these guys, like these 4K televisions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are they really that crystal clear?
Yeah, they are. I mean, it's you shoot it with a red camera and it looks real. It looks hyper real. It looks amazing. So, if you're in an office building and you see a cityscape, that's pretty impressive, you're high up in a building, it's great. And so the person who was there, basically candid camera, they come in a room for a job interview, and behind the boss who's interviewing them is this picturesque window of a beautiful cityscape. And while they're sitting there in the middle of a job interview, a meteorite comes flying into view and blows up the city, and they just freak out.
And they kill the lights and everything too, so it's even like
you're
gonna give somebody a heart attack doing that.
Yeah,
oh my
for
gosh,
sure.
But that TV's got to be about $50,000 right now, but I think it'll
they're coming down. Some of the 4Ks are under 5,000.
That's great. Yeah,
you'll be reviewing one in about 2 weeks, I think.
Oh, it's funny. I actually there's like a cheap Chinese brand out, and I missed it. I get these Amazon things that I can pick an item a month, 2 items a month to review, and I just didn't click fast enough that month to get the 4K TV. My problem is there's nothing to play on it yet, but I'm sure that will change pretty soon. YouTube supports 4K, right?
Player.
Yeah, you need a red player too. Does YouTube supports 4K now, right?
Mm-hmm. In theory.
In theory, right? Nobody can play it, but it can support it. So we'll see what develops there. I think Apple's probably going to have a 4K display coming out pretty soon because they were teasing that with their Mac Pro. So, and a judge shut down Film on X, which is a Aereo-like retransmission service. I guess they didn't meet the loophole that Aereo kind of went through. I'm really excited about Aereo. I'm hoping it comes to Connecticut because I'd love to just scale back my cable.
Here's the interesting thing to me. If you built a little TV about this big, about the size of an iPhone, and you had an antenna on that, a digital antenna, that would get a signal of the local TV stations, that's legal. There's nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly legal. But if you instead don't make it a antenna and you just stream to an iPhone, that all of a sudden is a problem.
Right. Yep, exactly.
And it's like, tell me how that's different. I mean, the only way I know it's different is that you know who that person is and where that device is.
And I think that's what Aereo did, is they had those tiny little antennas that you just basically rent from them. And I guess they're going to have a scaling problem if too many people sign up for it, but I'm sure they must have considered that in the process. And all of this might be irrelevant soon because, you know what, I mean, how many hours did the Lizzie Bennet Diaries take away from network television, right? I mean, you got 10 minutes a shot on a lot of those episodes, right?
We were over 8.5 or 9 hours all together for strung all the content together. We were the longest by duration adaptation of Pride and Prejudice ever. We beat the BBC miniseries by about 3 hours. So yeah, it was we're putting out one of our Kickstarter perks. Our main Kickstarter perk was a DVD set that is going to be, I think, 8 DVDs. That's
Wow. If only amazing. You had One Direction do the soundtrack.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that is Tim's way of segmenting into the movies, and that was our number 5 movie this weekend. I forgot to put how much it earned, but it was enough to I'm sure it's made a lot of money for One Direction. And there's this great photo gallery you got to search for called Dads at the One Direction Concert who are like refugees falling asleep. and I'm watching this because I have a daughter, and I know in 10 years that is going to be maybe 15 years. That'll be my...
Yeah, it'll be a band called the Purple Purse that you've never heard of because they haven't been born yet. But,
exactly. and I'm going to get dragged to this horrible concert, and my wife is going to laugh at me. So that's number 5 on our list. Number 4 was Instructions Not Included. That's a Spanish language film, but it got really high ratings on a few websites, and now it's been driving some traffic. It was a $5 million movie, and it's brought in $16.7 million so far here in the States. It's pretty remarkable. And you know what? It's one of those things where you can't discount Spanish. I mean, the Hispanic population is growing, and there's a tremendous market opportunity there. And this is a kind of a good example of that. We're the Millers, 7.7 million this weekend, 123.
Don't discount Jennifer Aniston and her appeal to all those One Direction dads.
Exactly. She was, remember the 90s, like everybody had the Jennifer Aniston haircut. That was like
I did.
We need a photo of that for next week. We need to do that. That's you can do one of those Google Plus overlays with the Jennifer Aniston haircut now. Lee Daniels, The Butler, $92 million overall, $8.2 million this weekend. And this is so great for our show to talk about this number 1 film. Vin Diesel's Riddick, $18 million, and a lot of people suspect that it is a direct result of all of, and the Wrap has an article that's pontificating this as well, that all of his activities on social media have really led to this. He's got like 46 million people on his Facebook page. Insanity. And he's been really pushing this movie. I think he bought the rights to it himself, so he put his own money into it, and these are his fans thanking him.
Bought all the tickets too.
He probably did. Maybe that's the secret. Whatever works. Yeah. But he's like really been pushing this and really marketing this, and I think that it's almost like a reverse Kickstarter to some degree, that people are coming out to thank him, because the movie, just from at least the reviews, kind of sucks, but it doesn't matter. You like Vin Diesel, you like what he does, and that's growing it, right? What do you think?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's Jay, you have such a demand on Lizzie Bennet, and like people dying to see more of it, and obviously there's going to be a new iteration of it, a different story. I mean, is there something that you could do more with the characters and Lizzie Bennet to maybe transfer it to something else?
Yeah,
like that?
Well, we are doing a novelization is in the works.
Okay.
So a novel that one of the writers on the staff is writing a novel version of it. This is an ongoing issue because we move on to other projects, but there's such an enormous demand for these characters that they want more and more and more of them. But at some point, a story has to end for it to have resonance, and we reached an end point with the Lizzie Bennet characters where like this story is over, and this is where you get kind of a conflict between the way good storytelling works and the way social media works, because social media is a constant update that is never ending, and to do a satisfying ending to a story using this can be a challenge. So when we were doing Welcome to Sanditon, there was a lot of is Lizzie going to show up? Oh, is Darcy going to show up? Are we going to see characters from the other show? And we were like, well, this is the show we're doing. There's some new characters, and they were like, we don't want these new characters. We want the old characters, and that was a little bit of a challenge at times.
You also run into like the sacrilegiousness of it all too, right?
What do you mean by that?
Well, you can't have these characters doing something that they didn't do in the original book. I mean, that's
to a certain extent. To a certain extent, you want the characters to remain true to who they are supposed to be. But I mean, we did write in. So for Welcome to Sanditon, we replaced the main character with one of our characters from the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and that changed the atmosphere and changed the story a bit. And so we were able to, and we had planned this from the beginning, to have Mr. Darcy do a cameo appearance at the end. So we were able to pay that off, and people were thrilled when he showed up. But it is a challenge to end one story and end the journey of some characters and then move people on to a new set of characters when they've already invested so much.
They ran into the same problems when the Beverly Hillbillies went to Petticoat Junction, and people were upset that Ellie Mae wasn't going to be there all the time.
You invest invest a lot in these characters and their journeys, and even if they've reached their natural conclusion, there's a tendency to want more of them, and yeah.
Well, that is something we will have to keep following because the audience is still hungry. And Riddick, you set him in space, have him go work on a starship or something. It's working for Vin Diesel, so it could work.
Yeah, that'll help the budget too. That's,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Just a lot of green screen and
Sure.
some white dots somewhere. So, but we're going to wrap up the show this week. And before we do, though, Tim, here's how this Google Chrome thing works. This Chromecast. So I'm going to switch over to my little handheld camera here. This thing is becoming very useful having this little guy here. So we've got our iPad, and I'm going to load up from my subscription list here. The High Retro Game Lord has something here now. But I've got to do first. I've got to push this little button here and go to my sitting room. That's where I usually put this thing. And as you can see now, my TV says, oh, it's YouTube. I'm talking to YouTube. So we've got some videos loaded up here. I'm going to take this one from Johnny Carson. I'm going to add that to the TV queue. And this is what's neat is that it loads up a little TV queue. So as you're watching, your iPad is continually feeding stuff that you want over to this thing. And you can basically stream until, it's the ultimate couch potato tool. You never have to get up. It's constantly being fed. And when I start the Johnny Carson video, it immediately pops up on my screen here most of the time. And what's neat is that this thing is going out to YouTube on its own, so it's not using, here we go, so it's not using the iPad to really stream it. The iPad is following along with the timing, but really the video is not being mirrored. It's just coming in over the thing. So it's pretty neat. You can also grab a tab from your Chrome browser and toss it over there, and I found that to be really useful for like watching The Daily Show and some of the other shows that don't have an app or something you can run with Apple TV.
That's worth the $35 right there.
And it works. It works really, really well.
Yeah, because the mirroring has like a little lag when you throw it. When you do it, with the iPad to your Apple TV, there's something that's just a little bit off on the audio. It doesn't always work right. So if the Chrome device is just pulling it in, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So here we go. We can just toss it over there, and there is a delay. You don't see your mouse pad on there or anything. Your mouse cursor running. But what it'll do. Let me wait for the ad to finish here. Once you go full screen, it'll. In this case, the Chromecast is acting as a recipient of just the bits that are being displayed on the computer. So it's not going to The Daily Show and downloading it on the Chromecast. It's doing it through the laptop. So that allows you to play the flash video. So if I go full screen on here, you'll see on the TV it'll immediately start running full screen. And as the quality of that stream increases, it works. It'll increase the video quality, and the audio works great and syncs up perfectly, which is really, I think, pretty amazing. So I am very happy with this thing, and for $35, it is a no-brainer, especially if you don't have an Apple universe to work in. It's fabulous. So get one, get many. It is really a well-designed product. So. Anything interesting you've come across this week, Tim, or are we out of stuff to talk about?
I think we're out of time.
We are out of time. We went a long time today. Wow. So, Jay, thanks for joining us. This was really an awesome discussion, and we're really excited.
For having me.
And you're really building a new way of storytelling, and it's really exciting. And congrats on all your
you
success.
guys are changing TV.
Hope so.
Yeah, you're working hard enough.
It's like I said before, it's been an adventure, and once you step outside the confines of what you think the limitations are, and that's really the main thing that we've done, is we said, well, why don't we not assume that you can't do this and just see what happens? There amazing things are possible.
That's fantastic. Well, where can people find more about you and all the stuff that you're doing?
I'm on all of the usual social networks. At Jay Bushman on Twitter, jbushman.tumblr.com on Tumblr. I have a main website at jbushman.com. Twitter and Tumblr are usually the best ways to get a hold of me.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure people will find you and seek you out. And good. And thanks for joining us, Tim. Where can people find you?
At One Tim Street on Twitter.
And you can find me, Lon Seidman, LonSeidman on Twitter, or just go to lonseidman.com to get my Google+. This show, every Sunday morning, is recorded here in my basement and in Tim's house and wherever our guests are located. 11:30 a.m. Eastern time on Sunday mornings. You can catch us at that time. It's 8:30 Pacific, so get your favorite coffee going and join us. And we really want to get more...
Podcast.
That's right. You can download the audio version of the podcast. We're getting more and more every week, which is great. Very slow progression, but we're getting there. So you can find us on iTunes and Stitcher. And if there's some place where we are not, let me know, and we'll put ourselves there. And we have YouTube channel too. BehindTheVideo.com is our Google Plus community, so join that and you will be in the loop on all of the future stuff. And we really want to see some more interaction with you guys too. So if you are watching, definitely let us know in that Google Plus events page, which is what we use as the chat room during the week and during the whole show recording, so that we can have some more interaction with all of you. So that will do it for this edition of Behind the Video. We are a wrap.
Stories for this episode were compiled by producer Jason Perrier. Follow him on Twitter at JASONPERRIER. Behind the Video is a production of Ape Digital Incorporated and the Independent Media Network, LLC. All rights reserved.